At our daughter's wedding, my husband walked down the aisle and said, "Today I'm giving away my heart to the woman I love most." Then he took my best friend's arm instead of our daughter's. When Emma revealed the texts she'd found, everything collapsed, including him. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. My name is Margaret, and I'm 68 years old. For 42 years, I wore my wedding ring like a badge of honor, believing I'd found forever in a world where forever rarely exists. I was the wife who woke up early to make coffee just the way my husband Richard liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, served in the blue mug his mother gave us on our wedding day. I was the mother who never missed a school play, a soccer game, or a midnight conversation when my daughter Emma needed to talk about her dreams and fears. I was the friend who showed up with casseroles when someone was grieving and champagne when they were celebrating. People in our neighborhood knew me as the woman with the warmest smile and the most beautiful rose garden. What they didn't know was that I'd planted each of those roses the year I gave up my dream of becoming a landscape architect. Richard's real estate business was just starting, and he needed support, someone to handle the home front while he built our future. So I set aside my blueprints and design sketches, traded my career ambitions for soccer mom carpools and PTA meetings, and told myself that his success was our success. That's what wives did, I thought. That's what love looked like. I poured everything I had into building a home that felt like a sanctuary. Every piece of furniture held a memory. Every family photo on the wall told a story of sacrifice and devotion. I was the glue that held everyone together, the one who remembered birthdays, planned holiday gatherings, and made sure our family traditions never faded. When Emma was growing up, I was room mom, scout leader, and the mother all her friends wished they had. I loved being needed. I loved being the foundation everyone built their lives upon. And Linda, my best friend of 15 years, she was part of that foundation too. When her marriage fell apart 10 years ago, I held her while she cried. I let her sleep in our guest room for 3 months. I helped her find an apartment, co-signed her lease when her credit was damaged, and invited her to every Sunday dinner so she wouldn't feel alone. She became the sister I never had, the third piece of our family puzzle. Richard used to joke that we were the 3 musketeers. I thought we were unbreakable. I believed in loyalty the way some people believe in religion. I thought marriage vows were sacred promises, not temporary suggestions. I thought friendship meant protecting each other's hearts, not stealing them. I spent decades being the dependable one, the faithful one, the woman who never gave anyone a reason to doubt her integrity. I gave my youth, my dreams, my unwavering devotion to the people I loved most. Today was supposed to be the culmination of everything I'd worked for, the day I'd walk into that chapel and watch my only daughter marry the love of her life. I'd spent 6 months planning every detail, from the ivory roses in her bouquet to the handwritten place cards at the reception. This was supposed to be my proudest moment as a mother. Instead, it became the day I discovered that the 2 people I trusted most in the world had been plotting my destruction. And they'd planned to do it in front of everyone I knew on what should have been the happiest day of my life. This is my story. My life had a rhythm to it, a comfortable pattern that I'd perfected over 4 decades. Every morning started the same way. I'd wake at 6:30, slip out of bed quietly so Richard could sleep another 20 minutes, and pad downstairs in my slippers to start the coffee maker. The kitchen would fill with that rich, dark aroma that meant home. I'd stand at the window above the sink, watching the sunrise paint our backyard in shades of pink and gold, and feel genuinely grateful for the life I'd built. By 7, Richard would come down in his suit and tie, always impeccably dressed for another day at his real estate firm. He'd kiss my forehead, the same spot every single morning, and sit at the breakfast table while I placed his coffee and toast in front of him. We'd talk about his meetings, my plans for the day, what we'd have for dinner. Simple conversations that felt sacred because they were ours. After 42 years, we didn't need grand gestures. We had consistency, reliability, trust. My days were full but peaceful. I'd work in my rose garden after Richard left, pruning and watering the bushes I'd nurtured for years. Neighbors would wave as they walked past, sometimes stopping to admire the blooms or chat about community events. I volunteered at the local library on Tuesdays, hosted book club on Thursdays, and never missed my Saturday morning yoga class with the other women from church. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and it felt complete. The real joy came from Emma. My daughter and I talked every single day, sometimes twice a day, especially after she got engaged 6 months ago. Wedding planning became our special project. We'd spend hours on video calls looking at centerpiece options, debating between ivory and champagne linens, laughing over ridiculous cake designs. I loved watching her face light up when we found the perfect detail. She'd say, "Mom, what would I do without you?" And my heart would swell with purpose. I threw myself into making her wedding perfect. I created spreadsheets, contacted vendors, negotiated prices, and handled 1,000 tiny details that brides shouldn't have to worry about. It was my gift to her, a flawless day to start her new life. Every decision was made with love. Every penny spent was an investment in her happiness. And Linda was always there, weaving through our lives like she belonged. Sunday dinners at our house became tradition after her divorce. She'd arrive with wine and stories, settling into our dining room like it was her own. Richard would grill steaks while Linda and I prepared salads and sides, the three of us moving around the kitchen with easy familiarity. We'd eat on the back patio when weather allowed, talking until the citronella candles burned down and the stars came out. Linda helped with wedding planning, too. She had opinions on everything from invitations to bridesmaid dresses. Sometimes she'd come over during the week just to sit with me while I worked on DIY projects for the reception. We'd drink coffee, listen to music, and talk about life the way women do when they trust each other completely. She knew my fears, my dreams, my frustrations with getting older. I knew hers too. Or at least, I thought I did. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was. How naive. I was so busy being grateful for my beautiful, stable life that I never noticed the foundation cracking beneath my feet. I never suspected that the morning forehead kisses would stop meaning what I thought they meant, or that Sunday dinners were feeding a betrayal I couldn't imagine. Everything felt perfect because I believed it was, and that belief was about to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. It started 3 weeks before the wedding with something so small I almost missed it. I walked into the kitchen one afternoon and found Richard and Linda standing by the counter, their heads close together, voices low and urgent. The moment they heard my footsteps, they jumped apart like teenagers caught doing something wrong. The conversation died instantly, replaced by bright, artificial smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Hey, honey," Richard said, his voice just a fraction too cheerful. "We were just talking about Emma's wedding gift, trying to coordinate so we don't duplicate." Linda nodded vigorously, tucking her hair behind her ear in that nervous gesture she always did when she was uncomfortable. "Yes, exactly. You know how it is. Don't want to both get them the same blender or something?" I laughed, because that's what you do when people offer reasonable explanations. But something about the energy in that kitchen felt wrong, like walking into a room where an argument just ended. The air was too thick, too charged. I brushed it off, told myself I was being silly, and asked if anyone wanted iced tea. We moved on. But that uncomfortable flutter in my stomach stayed with me for hours. Then came the family dinner the following week. We'd invited Emma and her fiancé Jake over to finalize the ceremony details. Emma sat across from me, her wedding binder open, radiating excitement as she ran through the timeline. "So, Dad, you'll walk me down the aisle at exactly 2:30, right? Jake's mom will already be seated, then your mom, then Mom Margaret, and then it's our moment." I watched Richard's face as she spoke. He smiled at our daughter, but for just a split second, maybe half a heartbeat, he hesitated. His eyes flickered toward Linda, who was sitting at the end of the table, and something unspoken passed between them. It was so fast I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But I didn't imagine the tightness in his jaw or the way his fingers gripped his water glass a little too hard. "Of course, Princess," he finally said, his voice warm and fatherly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." But that pause, that tiny, almost imperceptible pause before he answered, it planted something dark and uncomfortable in my chest that I couldn't quite shake. The third incident happened 4 days later. I needed to run to the grocery store, and Richard's car was blocking mine in the driveway. I grabbed his keys to move it, and when I opened the driver's side door, something gold caught the sunlight on the floor mat. I bent down and picked it up, a delicate hoop earring with a small pearl drop. Linda's earring. I recognized it immediately because I'd been with her when she bought them at that boutique downtown 2 months ago. I stood there holding it, my mind racing to make sense of why Linda's jewelry would be in my husband's car. When Richard came outside, I held it up. "Found this. Linda must have dropped it." He barely glanced at it. "Oh yeah, her car was in the shop last week. I gave her a ride to the store. She's always losing those things." He chuckled, took the earring from my hand and slipped it into his pocket. "I'll give it back to her on Sunday." His explanation was perfectly logical, completely reasonable. Linda's car had been in the shop. I remembered her complaining about it. Friends give friends rides. Earrings fall out. Simple. But his tone was too smooth, too prepared, like he'd rehearsed this answer before I'd even asked the question. And why hadn't he mentioned giving her a ride? We told each other everything, didn't we? I pushed the thought away, forced myself to smile, and drove to the store. But doubt had taken root, and it was starting to grow. I became an expert at lying to myself. Every time that uncomfortable feeling crept into my chest, I shoved it down with rational explanations and forced optimism. This was Richard, my husband of 42 years, the man who'd held my hand through my mother's funeral, who'd stayed up all night with me when Emma had pneumonia as a baby, who'd built a life with me brick by brick. The idea that he could betray me was absurd, impossible, almost offensive to even consider. And Linda? Sweet, broken Linda who'd sobbed in my arms over her ex-husband's infidelity? She knew what betrayal felt like. She'd lived through that nightmare. There was no way, absolutely no way she could inflict that same pain on me. We were closer than sisters. She called me her person, her safe place. Women like us didn't destroy each other. We protected each other. I convinced myself the stress of wedding planning was making me paranoid. I'd read articles about mothers experiencing anxiety before their daughters' weddings. Something about letting go, about your baby no longer needing you the same way. Maybe that's all this was. My mind creating problems that didn't exist because I was afraid of the change coming, afraid of Emma starting her own family and leaving me behind. The whispered conversations? People whisper about surprise parties and gift ideas. Nothing sinister. The strange glance at dinner? I probably misread it. I'd been tired that day, hadn't slept well. The earring in the car? Richard had literally given me a perfectly logical explanation. Why was I trying to create drama where none existed? When I noticed Richard's phone face down on the coffee table more often, when for years he'd always left it face up, unlocked, nothing to hide, I told myself he was probably planning something special, maybe a surprise anniversary trip. We'd be celebrating 43 years in October, just 2 months after Emma's wedding. He was probably coordinating with a travel agent, looking at romantic getaways, wanting to surprise me. The thought made me smile. See? There was always a loving explanation if you looked for it. Linda started canceling our usual coffee dates around this time. First one, then another, then 3 in a row. "Work has been insane," she'd text. "My new boss is riding me hard. Rain check?" I understood. She'd just started a new position at a marketing firm. Of course she was busy, trying to prove herself, make a good impression. I was proud of her for rebuilding her career after the divorce. I sent supportive messages and told her I'd be there whenever she had time. Good friends don't guilt-trip each other about being busy. I threw myself into wedding preparations with almost manic energy. If I stayed busy enough, the doubts couldn't catch me. I spent hours arranging seating charts, confirming vendor deliveries, double-checking every detail. I made lists and spreadsheets and backup plans for my backup plans. Emma teased me about being over-prepared, but I couldn't stop. Staying busy felt safe. Staying busy meant I didn't have time to think about the way Richard had started working late more often, or how Linda always seemed to have an excuse for why she couldn't talk when I called. I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror sometimes, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep, and I'd see worry etched into the lines around my eyes. I looked older than I had 6 months ago. Tired, but I'd splash cold water on my face and tell myself everything was fine. Trust was the foundation of love. Without trust, what did I have? 42 years of memories reduced to dust and suspicion. So I chose trust. I chose belief. I chose to ignore every instinct screaming that something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. Because the alternative, that the two people I loved most were capable of destroying me, was simply too painful to consider. 1 week before the wedding, I was in the kitchen trying to find my grandmother's lemon cake recipe for the rehearsal dinner. I'd saved it on my phone months ago, but the app kept crashing. My phone was old, acting up constantly, another thing on my list to deal with after the wedding. Richard's iPad was charging on the counter, and I picked it up without thinking. We'd always shared devices freely, no passwords between us, no secrets. That's what I believed anyway. I typed lemon cake recipe into the search bar, scrolling through results when a text notification banner dropped down from the top of the screen. The contact name just said L, with a heart emoji. My finger hovered over the screen, frozen. The preview text made my stomach drop. I can't wait until this is over and we can finally be free. Just a few more days. Time stopped. My kitchen went silent except for the blood rushing in my ears. I stared at those words, reading them over and over, trying to make them mean something else, anything else. But there was no other interpretation, no innocent explanation. My hands trembled as I tapped the notification. The full message thread opened, and my world ended. Months of messages, 8 months to be exact. I scrolled up with shaking fingers, my breath coming in short gasps. I miss your touch. Tonight was perfect. She has no idea. I've never felt this way before. We deserve this happiness. Photos that made bile rise in my throat, intimate pictures I couldn't unsee, wouldn't ever be able to forget. Meeting times. Tuesday, 3 p.m., the usual hotel. Thursday, when she's at book club. My book club. They'd been together while I was at my Thursday book club, probably laughing about how convenient my predictable schedule was. I kept scrolling, each message a knife twisting deeper. Then I found the one that turned my blood to ice. Once we execute the property transfer after the wedding, we can be together openly. The lawyer confirmed everything is in place. She'll never suspect anything until it's too late. Another message from Richard. The life insurance policy is updated. You're the sole beneficiary now. I forged her signature. No one will question it. Linda's response. I love you. Soon we'll have everything we've dreamed of. A sound came out of me, something between a scream and a sob. The iPad slipped from my hands and hit the hardwood floor with a sickening crack, the screen splintering into a spider web of broken glass. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted and spun. I grabbed the counter to stay upright, my legs threatening to give out. Margaret, what happened? Richard's voice came from the hallway. He'd been in his office. He rushed into the kitchen, concern on his face, but the moment he saw the shattered iPad on the floor, screen still glowing with their messages, his expression transformed. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. He started, but nothing followed. What could he possibly say? I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. How long? My voice came out hollow, distant like it belonged to someone else. "Margaret, let me explain." "How long?" I screamed, and he flinched. "It's not what you think." "Don't." I held up my hand, tears streaming down my face. "Don't you dare insult me with lies. I read everything. Everything, Richard. The affair, the property transfer, the life insurance fraud. You were going to steal everything from me and throw me away like garbage." He opened his mouth to respond, but I could see the truth in his eyes. The guilt, the calculation, the realization that his carefully constructed plan had just imploded. And that's when my 42-year marriage died. Right there, in the kitchen, where I'd made him coffee every morning for 4 decades. Richard didn't have the strength to maintain the lie. Not when the evidence was literally shattered at our feet, messages still glowing through the cracked screen. He sank into one of our kitchen chairs, the same chairs we'd bought together 30 years ago, and put his head in his hands. For a moment, I thought he might cry. Part of me wanted him to. Part of me wanted to see him suffer even a fraction of what I was feeling. "It started last January," he said quietly, not looking at me, "at your birthday party." My birthday party. The one I'd hosted in our home, where I'd made all the food and decorated and invited everyone we loved. Where Linda had helped me set up and stayed late to clean. Where Richard had kissed me at midnight and told me I was still beautiful at 67. "We were cleaning up after everyone left," he continued, his voice flat and distant. "We started talking. Really talking. About life, about feeling invisible as we got older, about wondering if there was still time for passion and excitement. It was just conversation at first, emotional connection, understanding." "Understanding," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "You found understanding while I was loading the dishwasher upstairs." He flinched but continued. "It became more over time. We didn't plan it, Margaret. It just happened. She gets me in ways—" He stopped himself, finally looking up at my face. Whatever he saw there made him go pale. "In ways I don't?" I finished for him, my voice dangerously quiet. "Is that what you were going to say? After 42 years of supporting your dreams, raising your daughter, building your home, I don't understand you." "We are not young anymore," he said, and I heard desperation creeping into his voice. "We've been together since we were kids. Don't you ever wonder what else is out there? Don't you ever want to feel alive again before it's too late?" The audacity of that statement stole my breath. "So you decided to steal everything from me? The house? Our savings? You were going to leave me with nothing?" "You would have been fine," he said, and I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're resourceful, you have skills, you would have figured it out." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Richard's face went even paler. "That's probably Linda. I texted her when I heard you scream. 'Margaret, please—'" "You called her?" My voice rose to a shriek. "You called her? To come to our home?" But she was already walking in. She had a key, of course, because I'd given her 1 year ago for emergencies. Linda appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes red and swollen, mascara already smeared down her cheeks. She was dressed nicely, I noticed. A new blouse I'd never seen, expensive-looking jewelry, bought with money stolen from me, probably. "Margaret," she sobbed, and actually moved toward me like she wanted a hug. I stepped back so violently I hit the counter. Don't you dare touch me." "I never meant for this to happen," she cried, wringing her hands. "You have to believe me. We tried to fight it, we really did, but we can't help who we love." I stared at this woman I'd called my best friend, searching her face for any sign of remorse, any indication that she understood the magnitude of what she'd done. But all I saw was a woman who wanted forgiveness without earning it, who wanted to be absolved without facing consequences. "You're right," I said coldly. "You can't help who you love, but you can help who you betray, who you steal from, who you destroy. You chose this, Linda. Every step of the way, you chose this." Richard stood and moved to Linda's side. He actually took her hand, right there in front of me, in our kitchen, in the home I'd built. And that gesture, that simple, unconscious intertwining of their fingers, confirmed what I already knew. They weren't conflicted. They weren't sorry. They were just upset they got caught. They left together that night. Richard packed a bag while I sat motionless on the couch, numb and hollow. Linda waited in her car like a getaway driver. He tried to say something before walking out, some pathetic attempt at closure, but I turned my face away. The front door closed, and I was alone in the house that suddenly felt like a mausoleum of broken promises. I should have collapsed, should have cried myself to sleep, but instead something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. That text message kept echoing in my mind. Once we execute the property transfer after the wedding. What property transfer? What exactly had they planned? At 11 o'clock that night, I walked into Richard's home office. He'd always been meticulous about his paperwork, everything organized in labeled file folders and color-coded binders. I started with the filing cabinet, pulling out folders with shaking hands. What I found in the first hour made my blood run cold. Mortgage documents dated 3 months ago. Our house, the house I'd lived in for 30 years, the house we'd paid off 15 years ago, had been remortgaged for $650,000. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, but I'd never seen these papers before in my life. It was a forgery, a convincing one, but still a forgery. Richard had taken out a massive loan against our home without my knowledge and forged my signature to do it. But where had the money gone? Our joint checking account showed normal activity. I logged into our online banking, my fingers trembling as I typed the password we'd shared for years. The joint savings account we'd built together, our retirement fund, our safety net, had a balance of $1,200. Last time I checked 3 months ago, there was over $400,000 in that account. I clicked through transaction history, watching our life savings disappear in systematic transfers. $20,000 here, $35,000 there, all moved to an account I didn't recognize. I searched Richard's email next, typing offshore into the search bar. Dozens of messages appeared, correspondence with a bank in the Cayman Islands. He'd opened an account in his name only and transferred everything, our entire life savings, where I couldn't touch it. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, cold, mechanical as I kept digging. Life insurance documents, updated 2 weeks ago. Our policy had been modest, $250,000 with me as the beneficiary. The new documents showed the amount increased to $1 million. And the beneficiary? Linda Henderson. Not his wife of 4 decades, his mistress. Another forged signature at the bottom, my name written in handwriting that approximated mine, but wasn't quite right. Then I found the emails with his lawyer. My vision blurred with rage as I read their strategy laid out in cold, clinical detail. Wait until after Emma's wedding to avoid unnecessary family drama and potential interference from the daughter. Transfer all liquid assets beforehand. File for divorce immediately after the wedding, with a prenuptial agreement Richard claimed we'd signed in 1983. Another forgery, another lie. The lawyer assured him that by the time I hired an attorney and began fighting back, Richard and Linda would be settled in a house they'd already picked out in Florida, living off my money. One email from Richard made me physically ill. What are the chances she'll just accept this quietly? Margaret's non-confrontational. She might just let us go rather than cause a scene. They'd counted on my kindness. My tendency to avoid conflict. My desire to keep the peace. They'd weaponized my good nature against me. This wasn't just an affair, this was financial murder, systematic, calculated, cruel. They'd planned to erase me from my own life, steal everything I'd worked for, and leave me penniless and alone at 68 years old. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. I don't remember walking upstairs. I don't remember how I ended up on my bedroom floor at 3 a.m, clutching my wedding album to my chest, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made me wonder if hearts could actually break, if grief could literally kill you. Part of me hoped it could. Death seemed easier than facing what my life had become. The album fell open to our wedding day. I was 26 in that photo, radiant in my mother's vintage lace dress, looking at Richard like he hung the moon. He was gazing back at me with such tenderness, such promise. "I'll love you forever," he'd whispered as we danced our first dance. "You're my everything, Margaret, my whole world." Lies. All of it. Or maybe it was true once, and I'd just been too blind to notice when it stopped being true. When had I stopped being enough? When had I become invisible? I flipped through pages with trembling hands, each photograph now contaminated by knowledge I couldn't unknow. Our first house, Emma's birth, birthday parties and Christmases and anniversaries. 42 years of memories that I'd treasured like sacred relics, now revealed as nothing but a long con. Had any of it been real? Had he ever actually loved me? Or had I just been convenient, a placeholder until something better came along? And Linda, God, Linda. I saw her face in dozens of photos, at Emma's graduation, at family barbecues, at my birthday parties. She'd stood beside me through everything. She'd been my maid of honor at my wedding, for God's sake. I'd held her hand through her divorce, wiped her tears, told her she deserved better. And this was how she repaid me? By stealing my husband and plotting to steal my life? The betrayal from her somehow hurt worse than Richard's. I'd chosen to marry him, but I'd chosen to trust her. Female friendship was supposed to be sacred, unbreakable. We were supposed to protect each other from men like this, not become accomplices in each other's destruction. Fresh sobs racked my body. I thought about Emma's wedding in 6 days. How could I stand there and smile? How could I watch my daughter pledge forever to someone when my own forever had been a cruel joke? What kind of example had I set for her, staying with a man who saw me as disposable, sacrificing everything for someone who valued me so little he'd forge my signature and steal my future? At 68 years old, I had nothing. No career to fall back on. I'd given that up for Richard's dreams. No savings. He'd stolen it all. No home. He'd mortgaged it, without my knowledge. No identity beyond Richard's wife. And now I wasn't even that anymore. Who was Margaret without the roles I'd spent a lifetime playing? I genuinely didn't know. I caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. An old woman stared back, gray hair wild, face swollen and red from crying, eyes hollow with devastation. When had I gotten so old? When had the vibrant girl in that wedding photo become this broken, discarded woman crumpled on the floor? What did I do wrong? I whispered to my reflection. What was so terrible about me that I deserved this? The silence offered no answers. Just the sound of my own breathing, ragged and painful in the darkness of the bedroom I'd shared with a stranger for 42 years. I stayed on that floor until dawn broke through the curtains, certain that this pain would swallow me whole, that I'd never be anything but broken ever again. I was wrong. The sun rose at 6:43 that morning. I watched it through my bedroom window, still sitting on the floor where I'd spent the night, my wedding album discarded beside me. Light crept across the hardwood, illuminating the dust particles floating in the air, and something inside me shifted. Not healed, I was nowhere near healed, but changed, hardened. I caught my reflection in the mirror again. Same red, swollen eyes, same tear-stained cheeks, same gray hair in disarray. But beneath the devastation, I saw something I'd forgotten was there. Strength. The kind of strength that comes from surviving things you thought would destroy you. The kind of strength forged in fire. I thought about my mother, who'd raised 3 children alone after my father died young. I thought about my grandmother, who'd immigrated to this country with nothing and built a life through sheer determination. I came from a line of women who didn't break. They bent, They adapted, they survived. That blood ran through my veins. Why had I forgotten? Slowly I stood. My legs were stiff from hours on the floor, but they held me. I walked to the mirror and looked myself directly in the eyes. "No," I said aloud, my voice hoarse but steady. "No, you don't get to do this to me." Richard and Linda thought I was soft, non-confrontational. They'd counted on me accepting this quietly, too afraid of conflict to fight back. They'd weaponized my kindness, my tendency to keep the peace, my desire to avoid scenes. They thought I'd curl up and disappear, make their lives easier by simply surrendering everything I'd built. They were wrong. I thought about Emma, my daughter who was about to start her marriage, watching her mother be discarded like trash. What lesson would that teach her? That women should accept betrayal gracefully? That after a lifetime of devotion, you should expect nothing but cruelty? That your value expires when you're no longer young? Absolutely not. I would not model that for my daughter. I would not let her think that this was acceptable, normal, something women just tolerate. And the other women, Richard and Linda, might hurt, because people like them always hurt others, always move on to the next victim once the current one stops serving their purposes. If I let them walk away unpunished, I'd be complicit in their future crimes. A flame ignited in my chest. Not just anger, though God knows I was furious, but purpose, clarity. For the first time in 42 years, I wasn't thinking about what Richard needed, or what would keep the peace, or how to make everyone else comfortable. I was thinking about justice, about truth, about making sure that two people who'd plotted to destroy me faced consequences for their cruelty. I walked to my desk with a straight spine and a clear head. My hands didn't shake as I pulled out a fresh notebook and opened it to the first page. At the top, I wrote, "Battle Plan." I had 6 days until the wedding. 6 days to dismantle the conspiracy they'd spent 8 months constructing. 6 days to protect my daughter, reclaim my assets, and ensure that their betrayal didn't stay hidden in darkness. The old Margaret, the people pleaser, the peacekeeper, the woman who sacrificed everything to avoid confrontation, had died on this bedroom floor last night. The woman who remained was someone Richard had never met, someone he'd underestimated catastrophically. I clicked my pen and started writing. Emma first. She needed to know everything, then an attorney, then a forensic accountant, then a private investigator. They wanted war? Fine. I'd been preparing for battle my entire life without realizing it. Every budget I'd balanced, every problem I'd solved, every challenge I'd overcome. It was all training for this moment, and I was ready. I called Emma at 7 in the morning. She answered groggily, "Mom? What's wrong?" And the concern in her voice almost broke my resolve. Almost. But I steadied myself, took a deep breath, and said the hardest words I'd ever spoken. "Sweetheart, I need you to come over right now, alone. Don't tell your father. It's urgent." She arrived 30 minutes later, still in pajama pants and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. The moment she saw my face, she knew something catastrophic had happened. I sat her down at the kitchen table and showed her everything: the messages, the forged documents, the offshore accounts, the life insurance fraud. I watched my daughter's expression transform from confusion to horror to a rage that mirrored my own. "He planned this for my wedding day?" Her voice shook. "He was going to use my wedding as cover to destroy you?" "Yes," I said simply. Emma's jaw clenched. She looked so much like me in that moment, the same fire in her eyes that I'd seen in my own mirror an hour earlier. "What are we going to do?" Not what are you going to do? We. My daughter, my ally, my partner in this fight. "We're going to make them pay," I said, "but I need your help." She didn't hesitate. "Whatever you need. Tell me." First, we drove to see my old college roommate, Patricia Chen, who'd become one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the state. I kept in touch with her over the years, sent Christmas cards, attended her daughter's wedding. Now I needed her professional expertise. Patricia listened to everything with a stone face, examining the evidence I'd printed out. When I finished, she smiled. Not warmly, but with the satisfaction of a predator spotting wounded prey. "We have everything we need," she said. "Forgery, fraud, theft, conspiracy. But Margaret, if you want maximum impact—" She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "We don't just file for divorce. We destroy them publicly. Use the wedding." My heart raced. "What do you mean?" "They plan to use Emma's wedding as their cover. Let's use it as their exposure. We document everything, prepare the evidence, and reveal it all when they least expect it. In front of everyone who matters. Family, friends, Richard's business associates. Complete annihilation." Emma and I exchanged glances. "Do it," we said in unison. Next, I called my brother David, a forensic accountant who'd made a career of following money trails for corporate fraud cases. Within hours, he'd traced every dollar Richard had stolen, documented every forged signature, and created an evidence file that would hold up in any court. "Sis," he said grimly, "this is bad, but we've got him cold. He's going to prison for this." I hired a private investigator who spent 3 days photographing Richard and Linda together at hotels, restaurants, the house they'd already picked out in Florida. Every image was time-stamped, geotagged, irrefutable. I called the bank and reported the fraudulent mortgage, freezing the account before Richard could access more funds. I contacted his business partners anonymously, alerting them to potential financial irregularities that might affect their investments. The seeds of doubt were planted, but the masterstroke, the piece that would make everything perfect, came from Emma. "Mom," she said, eyes bright with righteous fury, "what if Dad thinks everything is normal? What if we let him walk down that aisle, let him make his little speech, and then I stop the ceremony, project the evidence on screens in front of everyone?" I stared at my brilliant, fierce daughter. "You'd do that? Ruin your wedding day?" "He already ruined it," she said coldly. "Let's make sure he pays for it." And that's when I knew. We weren't just fighting back. We were going to win. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. 72 degrees, gentle breeze, scattered clouds that looked like they'd been painted across a blue canvas just for us. Any other time, I would have taken it as a blessing. Today, it felt like the universe setting the stage for something monumental. I woke at 5 in the morning, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. I'd slept surprisingly well the night before, the sleep of someone who knows exactly what they're doing and why. I dressed carefully in my mother-of-the-bride gown, an elegant champagne-colored dress that Richard had complimented when I'd shown it to him months ago, back when I still believed his compliments meant something. I applied makeup with steady hands, covering the sleepless nights and emotional devastation with foundation and concealer. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who appeared calm, dignified, ready to celebrate her daughter's happiness. Perfect. That's exactly what I needed them to see. I arrived at the venue at noon, 4 hours before the ceremony. Emma was already there with her bridesmaids, but she broke away the moment she saw me. We hugged tightly, and she whispered in my ear, "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Absolutely," I whispered back. "Are you?" "He deserves worse," she said coldly, and I'd never been more proud of her. The photographer started capturing getting ready moments. I smiled for every photo, helped Emma with her dress, dabbed tears from my eyes at all the appropriate moments. Anyone watching would see a devoted mother savoring her daughter's special day. No one suspected the evidence files loaded on Emma's phone, ready to project on screens we'd secretly had the venue install overnight. Guests began arriving at 1:30. I greeted them at the entrance, hugging relatives I hadn't seen in years, chatting with Emma's friends, playing the gracious hostess role I'd perfected over decades. Richard arrived at 2, looking nervous but composed in his tuxedo. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, I saw guilt flicker across his face. Good. He should feel guilty. though not nearly as guilty as he was about to feel. Linda sat in the third row, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Deep burgundy, expensive, cut to flatter. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup flawless. She caught my eye and gave me a sad, sympathetic smile like she felt sorry for me. The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. She had no idea that in less than an hour that perfect makeup would be running down her face in front of 200 witnesses. The ceremony began at 2:30 sharp. The officiant took his position. Emma's bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their flowing dresses. Jake's groomsmen followed. The music swelled. Traditional, romantic, beautiful. Everyone stood turning toward the back of the chapel where Emma waited with her father. I stood on the left side of the aisle, my heart pounding but my face serene. This was it. Everything we'd planned for 6 days was about to unfold. The wedding march began. Every head turned. Emma appeared at the entrance, breathtaking in her wedding gown, but she wasn't on Richard's arm yet. He stood beside her, taking a breath, preparing for his walk. And then Richard did something no one expected. He stopped at the microphone the wedding planner had positioned for readings, except we hadn't planned any readings. Emma had secretly requested it be there. Richard thought he was improvising a touching father-daughter moment. He looked out at the crowd, smiled, and spoke into the microphone. "Before we begin, I want to say something. Today, I'm giving away my heart to the woman I love most." Confused murmurs rippled through the guests. This wasn't traditional. Then Richard released Emma's arm, turned, and extended his hand toward Linda. Gasps erupted throughout the chapel. Heads swiveled in confusion. People looked at each other, trying to understand what was happening. Some laughed nervously, assuming this was some kind of joke, an unconventional father of the bride speech that would loop back to Emma any second. But Linda stood. Tears streaming down her face, she rose from the third row and began walking toward Richard. The laughter died. The confusion intensified. I heard Richard's sister behind me whisper urgently, "What is he doing?" Jake's mother grabbed her husband's arm. Emma's friends exchanged horrified glances. The officiant stood frozen at the altar, completely lost. Richard and Linda met in the center aisle. He took both her hands, gazing at her with an expression of such tenderness that several guests audibly gasped. This wasn't a joke. This was real. They were watching a man abandon his daughter on her wedding day for another woman. "Richard, what the hell?" His brother started to stand, but before anyone could move, before Richard and Linda could embrace, Emma's voice cut through the chapel like a blade. "Stop!" The single word echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Every head whipped toward my daughter, who stood at the entrance in her wedding gown, her phone in her hand, her face a mask of cold fury. The music cut out. Silence fell so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Emma walked down the aisle with slow, deliberate steps, her wedding dress trailing behind her. She didn't look at her father. She looked at the crowd. "Before this ceremony continues," she said, her voice projecting clearly through the chapel's sound system, "everyone needs to see who my father really is." She tapped her phone. The decorative screens on either side of the altar, screens everyone assumed were for displaying romantic photos during the reception, lit up with text messages. Richard and Linda's affair, exposed in high definition, explicit messages, planning conversations. She has no idea. Can't wait to be free. Just a few more days. The chapel erupted. Shocked cries, gasps of horror. Richard's face went from confused to white with terror in seconds. "Emma, what are you? This isn't. I'm showing everyone the truth, Dad." Emma's voice was steady, cold, more adult than I'd ever heard her. "How you and Mom's best friend have been having an affair for 8 months. How you plan to use my wedding as cover to destroy her financially." More evidence flooded the screens. Bank statements showing the stolen savings, forged mortgage documents, life insurance papers with Linda's name where mine should have been, email exchanges with lawyers about the divorce strategy, every crime, every betrayal, displayed in crystal clarity for 200 witnesses. The chapel descended into chaos. Richard's business partners, 3 of them in attendance, stood abruptly, faces thunderstruck. My sister started crying. Emma's friends were shouting questions. Richard's mother screamed, "Richard, tell me this isn't true." But Richard couldn't speak. His face had gone from white to gray. He clutched his chest, his breathing rapid and shallow. "You wanted my heart, Dad?" Emma continued, her voice breaking now, emotion finally cracking through. "You had it my entire life. You wanted Mom's home? She built it. You wanted her trust? She gave it freely, but you will not have her silence." I stood from my seat and walked to the center aisle. Every eye turned to me. I looked at Richard, at Linda with her mascara running down her face, at the evidence still glowing on the screens. "You wanted everyone here to celebrate love," I said quietly, but my voice carried. "Let them witness betrayal instead." Richard collapsed, just crumpled to the ground, clutching his chest, hyperventilating. Linda screamed. Someone shouted for a doctor. Paramedics who'd been guests rushed forward. The truth was free, and there was no taking it back. The paramedics determined it was a panic attack, not a heart attack. Richard was breathing into a paper bag while EMTs took his vitals, surrounded by 200 witnesses who'd just watched his life implode. Some guests were crying. Others were angry, shouting questions at Linda, who sat in a pew sobbing uncontrollably. Richard's business partners had already walked out, phones pressed to their ears, undoubtedly calling lawyers and accountants to protect their own interests. I stood in the center aisle, perfectly calm, watching the chaos unfold around me. Emma came to my side and took my hand. "Mom, are you okay?" I looked at my daughter, my fierce, brilliant daughter who'd sacrificed her perfect wedding day to stand up for what was right. And I smiled, actually smiled. "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm free." The wedding was postponed, obviously. Guests filtered out in stunned silence, some stopping to hug me, others avoiding eye contact with Richard entirely. By 4 o'clock, the chapel was empty, except for family. Richard's mother approached me, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I raised him better than this. I thought I did anyway." I hugged her because none of this was her fault. "I know you did, Dorothy. I know." Patricia Chen worked fast. Within 72 hours, she'd filed emergency injunctions freezing all of Richard's accounts, including the offshore ones. The forged documents were submitted to the district attorney's office. Criminal charges were filed: fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy. Richard's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. His business partners officially severed ties, releasing a public statement distancing themselves from his alleged criminal activities. The life insurance company launched an investigation into the fraudulent beneficiary change. My brother David's forensic accounting revealed even more stolen funds we hadn't initially discovered. Nearly $700,000 total that Richard had siphoned over the past year. Linda lost her job 3 days after the wedding when the scandal reached her employer. Turns out marketing firms don't love being associated with women who conspire to defraud their best friends. Her landlord evicted her when she couldn't make rent. The house in Florida they'd picked out together. The sellers backed out of the deal once they learned about the fraud charges. And Richard and Linda's great romance? It crumbled under the weight of public shame and legal consequences. When love is built on betrayal, it can't survive scrutiny. They turned on each other within weeks, Linda claiming Richard had manipulated her, Richard insisting she'd seduced him, both desperate to minimize their own culpability, both pathetic. 2 weeks after what should have been Emma's wedding day, we held the real ceremony, small and intimate, just 30 people who actually loved us. Emma walked down the aisle with my brother David on one side and me on the other. We both gave her away, both welcomed Jake into our family. There were tears, but they were happy ones, healing ones. The divorce settlement gave me everything: the house, the savings that were recovered, half of Richard's remaining business assets, and substantial damages for emotional distress and fraud. At 68 years old, I was more financially secure than I'd ever been, and it was money I'd rightfully earned through 4 decades of partnership. But more than the money, I reclaimed myself. I started painting again, landscapes and portraits I'd abandoned when I was 26. I enrolled in a landscape architecture course at the community college, finally pursuing the dream I'd deferred for someone else's ambition. I traveled to Italy with Emma and Jake, walking through gardens in Tuscany and feeling genuinely alive for the first time in years. I joined a support group for women over 60 navigating divorce. I shared my story. I listened to theirs. I learned that betrayal doesn't discriminate by age, and neither does resilience. Richard pleaded guilty to avoid prison time, accepting probation and restitution payments. I see the checks arrive monthly, reminders that actions have consequences, that justice sometimes actually prevails. I'm 69 now, and I'm just beginning. I'm standing in my garden right now, on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. The roses I planted decades ago are preparing for winter, their blooms fading but their roots strong and deep. I'm 69 years old, and I'm more alive than I've been in 40 years. Sometimes I think about that wedding day, not with pain anymore, but with something closer to gratitude. Strange as it sounds, that day gave me back my life. It forced me to see the truth I'd been avoiding, to find strength I'd forgotten I possessed, to remember that I was a whole person before I became someone's wife, and I could be a whole person after. Emma is thriving. She and Jake just celebrated their first anniversary, a small, joyful celebration, with people who actually love them. She calls me every day, not out of obligation, but because we're genuinely friends now, equals who've weathered a storm together. She tells me I'm her hero, but the truth is, we saved each other. She showed me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. I see Linda occasionally from a distance at the grocery store or the post office. She looks smaller now, diminished. We don't speak. There's nothing left to say. I don't hate her anymore. Hate requires energy I'd rather spend on living. But I don't forgive her either. Some betrayals are simply unforgivable, and that's okay. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Richard sends the restitution checks on time every month. I never open them myself. My accountant handles that. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's working as a property manager now, a significant step down from owning his own firm. He's alone. No one wanted to build a life with a man who'd proven himself capable of such calculated cruelty. The lesson I learned, the one I wish I'd known at 26, is this: your worth isn't determined by how well you serve others. Sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love. It's self-erasure. For 42 years, I made myself smaller so Richard could feel bigger. I silenced my dreams so his could be loud. I mistook his dependence on me for partnership, his comfort with me for love. Trust is precious, but blind trust is dangerous. I trusted because I thought that's what good wives and good friends do. But real trust should be earned continuously, proven through actions, not just assumed because of history or titles. And here's what they don't tell you. It's never too late to fight for yourself. At 68, I thought my life was over. Society tells women our value expires, that we should be grateful for whatever crumbs we receive, that starting over at our age is impossible. Society is wrong. I am living proof that you can rebuild at any age, that resilience doesn't have an expiration date, that the woman you become after betrayal can be stronger, wiser, and more authentically herself than the woman you were before. Greed destroys families. Betrayal wounds deeply, but neither has to define your ending. You get to write that yourself. Now I want to hear from you. If you discovered your spouse and best friend were plotting to destroy you, what would you do? Would you expose them publicly like I did, or handle it privately? Have you ever faced betrayal like this? From family, from friends, from people you trusted completely? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today, the validation that could give another person the courage to fight back. If Margaret's courage inspired you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more powerful true stories about resilience, justice, and the strength we discover when life tests us. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're stronger than they think. Remember, you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become after. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning.